All right, welcome to another deep dive
Yeah,
into some really fascinating stuff you guys have sent our way.
absolutely.
So today we're looking at something that, really sits at the heart of Christian belief, right? This idea that God's global mission
Yes.
is guaranteed to succeed, that God will fill the earth with
Yeah.
his glory.
It's not a matter of if, but when, right?
It is. And you've sent us some really compelling sources
Yeah.
that explore this idea of certainty.
Yes.
And what we're going to try and do in this deep dive is kind of go beyond
Right.
just acknowledging that certainty and really try and grapple with what it actually means.
What does it mean for us?
Yeah, for how we understand missions, how we engage in missions, and hopefully uncover, some fresh perspectives along the
Some
way.
angles.
Yeah. And really leave you feeling, confidently engaged rather than overwhelmed by this sense of duty.
Well said. I think there's a real danger of that happening with this topic, isn't there?
Yeah.
Feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, there's so much to do and I'm not doing enough.
Right.
But the material you sent, it really does point to something much more, joyful, hopeful.
It's rooted in this confidence in God, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to explore. We've got this really rich collection of stuff.
Yeah.
That all kind of circles this central truth, this idea that God's plan for the nations, for all peoples, it will absolutely come to fruition. It's a done deal.
Yeah.
And I think diving into how that actually plays out, that's where things get exciting.
Okay, so let's dive right in then. So the core assertion, right? The thing that immediately jumps out at you from these sources is this absolute confidence that God will achieve his purpose, right?
Yes.
That his glory will cover the whole earth.
Right.
And it's presented as a done deal.
Right.
Not just, a hopeful possibility.
Absolutely. Not wishful thinking, not maybe
Yeah.
presented as a firm reality.
Yeah, and our sources point out that, the Old Testament lays this really powerful foundation.
It does.
For this unwavering certainty, right?
Yeah.
And one of the passages that really struck me was Numbers 14.20, Taz 23.
Well, that's a good one.
Where, after the Israelites' failure of faith, God makes this incredible vow, right?
He does. It's powerful.
She says, "As I live, and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord."
And Piper, he picks up on something really interesting there, right?
Yes, he does. He really draws attention to that parallel construction there.
Yes. He's a master at that kind of thing.
He is.
Finding these little nuggets of meaning in the way things are phrased.
Yeah, so the certainty of God's glory filling the earth is presented as being as undeniable as God's own existence.
It's an amazing thought, isn't it?
That is a pretty staggering thought, you know? And it really makes you think, right? When the Israelites doubted God's ability, even after he'd given them these clear promises, what does that kind of historical example challenge us to consider about our own potential doubts, about the ultimate success of global mission today,
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we like the Israelites in the wilderness sometimes?
Oh, are we?
Seeing God do amazing things, giving these incredible promises, and yet still struggling to really believe it, to let that certainty sink in?
Yeah.
I think it reminds us that human doubt, human weakness, even disobedience, it doesn't ultimately derail God's purposes.
It doesn't.
No. His promises, they're anchored in his character.
Right.
Not our performance. It's not about us getting it right all the time.
Wow.
That's freeing, isn't it?
That is freeing.
And Malachi 1.8:11 really reinforces this point. Even when you've got Israel offering flawed worship, disobeying God,
right.
He still declares that his name will be great among the nations from the east to the west. Their shortcomings, they couldn't derail God's plan.
Okay, so even when we look at the world today, right, and the challenges seem so immense, or our own efforts feel so insignificant, these passages, they really do offer this powerful perspective shift, don't they?
They do.
It's like it moves us from this kind of fragile hope that's dependent on our success.
Right. Like we have to make it happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart.
Right.
But these verses, they point to something completely different.
They do.
It's a confident expectation that's rooted in God's unstoppable will.
So instead of just striving, there's this underlying assurance of eventual triumph.
Exactly. And that triumph, it's not just some far-off event, something we just sit around and wait for passively. It's something we can have confidence in now.
Yeah.
And Even, as some interpretations suggest, something we can celebrate.
Oh, wow.
In anticipation.
I like that. I like that.
It reframes our involvement. It's not this desperate attempt to achieve some impossible goal,
Right.
but a meaningful participation in something whose victory is already secured.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And this is where, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, yeah.
Because the New Testament, right, builds on this foundation
Yeah.
laid in the Old Testament. And the book of Revelation, particularly chapter 5,
Powerful imagery there.
with this powerful imagery of the Lamb who was slain, it presents this just breathtaking
It's amazing.
vision of ultimate victory,
It's one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible.
Yeah, and Revelation 5.9, I think.
Oh, such a key verse.
It's a pivotal verse, right?
Yeah.
The new song that's being sung proclaims that the Lamb, through his sacrifice, ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. That is...
It's all-encompassing, isn't it?
That's an all-encompassing scope of redemption.
Yeah. Every corner of the world, every people group represented.
And Piper specifically connects this to missions, right?
He does.
Emphasizing that God's redeemed people will be present in every people group reached by the gospel. Now, some might say that the verse just speaks of a potential, right? That there's potential for people from every nation to be saved.
Yeah, I've heard that argument.
But how do these sources really definitively establish that this is a certainty?
Okay, that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And I think the language used in Revelation 5.9, particularly when you look at it alongside all these other prophetic declarations, it points to something much stronger than just potential. The idea of ransoming.
Yeah.
It implies a completed transaction with guaranteed outcome. It's not like God's just hoping for the best. He's already secured the victory. Patrick Johnstone, he makes a similar point.
He does.
Highlighting that vision of representatives from every distinct people group gathered before the throne.
Yes.
And it's not just a random assortment of individuals, right? It's this deliberate representation of God's work among all these diverse groups of humanity.
So the emphasis throughout these texts really points to a certainty, a definiteness.
A certainty in God's plan. This isn't something that's up in the air.
Right.
It's settled.
Okay, and this vision of ultimate triumph, it's not just isolated to Revelation 5, right? We see it echoed throughout the book.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got the great multitude from every nation in chapter 7.
Yes.
You've got the nations bringing their glory and honor into the New Jerusalem in chapters 21 and 22.
Beautiful picture, isn't it?
It is.
This incredible diversity, all united in worship.
Yeah, and then all nations worshiping in chapter 15, right?
Yeah. It's a recurring theme, this idea of God's global reign, the nations coming together to worship him.
It's a powerful, powerful theme. What stands out to you most about this?
I think for me, it's the inevitability that comes through.
The inevitability.
Yeah. It's not presented as some hope or some wish.
Right.
It's portrayed as a certain future reality.
Right.
And I think that's what provides so much encouragement,
so
much resilience, especially for those involved in missions who face setbacks and discouragement.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the ultimate outcome, it's secure.
Right. It is secure.
Regardless of what's happening right now.
Yeah. Okay, so this certainty, it isn't just based on a few isolated verses, right?
Not at all.
Our sources, they lay out these 4 key pillars.
Yes, these 4 pillars.
For this absolute confidence in God's mission.
It's a good way to think about it.
Well, what are those foundational truths again?
So first and foremost, you've got the absolute reliability of Jesus' own words.
Yeah.
Matthew 24.35. His declarations, they're more enduring than the physical universe.
That's powerful. That is powerful.
Heaven and earth will pass away.
Right.
But his words will never pass away.
Okay. What's number 2?
Second, you've got the complete effectiveness of Christ's sacrifice in redeeming God's chosen people. Revelation 5.9. The price has been paid, and its purpose will be fully realized. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, there's no going back.
Nope.
Okay, so that's 2. What's 3 and 4?
Okay, number 3.
Yeah.
God's unwavering commitment to his own glory. Isaiah 48.9-11 really illustrates this beautifully.
Yeah.
He acts for his own name's sake.
Right.
And his purposes will be accomplished to bring him praise.
Okay.
And finally, number 4, The complete sovereignty of God,
Right.
affirmed in Job 42.2. He has absolute power and authority to accomplish all his plans.
Yeah.
And no one can thwart his intentions.
And those four interconnected truths really provide this unshakable foundation, don't they?
They do.
For the certainty of God's global mission.
It's an amazing thing to reflect on, you know?
It is. It is. And given this incredibly solid foundation of certainty, you know, it naturally leads us to consider this apparent gap between this promise and
the current reality, right?
Yeah. The tension between what we know is going to happen and what we see around us.
Exactly. So we see this grand vision, right?
Yeah.
But then we look around and we see this, you know, unfinished task.
The work that still needs to be done.
Yeah, countless individuals.
Yes.
Entire people groups who haven't yet heard the gospel.
And for many, that's a source of discouragement.
It is. It is. So how does this this certainty of eventual triumph, how does that actually fuel?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think it's easy to get bogged down in the enormity of the task, isn't it?
It is.
And to lose sight of the bigger picture. But I think the fact that the mission isn't fully realized yet, that actually becomes a powerful source of encouragement.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about the Apostle Paul in Acts 18.
Okay.
He's facing significant opposition in Corinth.
Right.
Feeling discouraged, I'm sure. And God, he directly encourages Paul with this vision. He says, I have many in this city who are my people. Right? So it's like God's work is already underway.
Exactly.
Even when it's not immediately visible to us.
Right. It wasn't solely reliant on Paul's efforts to convert everyone.
Right.
God already had those who were his own in Corinth waiting to respond.
That's encouraging.
It's incredibly encouraging.
Yeah.
And I think it offers immense hope to anyone involved in sharing the gospel.
Okay.
Because it reminds us that God has his elect people in every corner of the world.
Right.
And our efforts, whether we see immediate fruit or not, they're part of his larger strategy to reach them.
Yeah. It's like our present work might just be laying the groundwork.
It's like preparing the soil for a future harvest.
Yeah. It's like Jesus's words in John 10:16.
Yes. Other sheep I have.
Where he says, I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice.
Yeah.
So there will be one flock, one shepherd. I mean, God's plan extends far beyond our current scope of vision.
Way beyond what we can see or comprehend.
Yeah. Yeah. And Paul himself clearly understood this, right?
He did.
In 2 Timothy 2:8-10, he speaks of enduring hardship. For the sake of the elect, that they also may obtain the salvation that is in Christ Jesus with eternal glory. You know, his suffering had a purpose connected to God's broader plan of salvation for those he'd chosen.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It is.
His perspective wasn't limited to immediate conversions.
Right.
It was rooted in that certainty of God's ultimate purpose.
Okay, now there's a potential misunderstanding that could arise here, couldn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right. This idea that if God's mission is absolutely guaranteed to succeed, then maybe our active involvement, our Christian missions, they're not really necessary, right?
That's the age-old question, isn't it?
It is. It is.
If God's going to do it anyway, why bother?
Yeah. How do our sources kind of address this potential pitfall?
Well, I think John Alexander's reflection from Urbana 67 is really helpful here. He talks about how he initially wrestled with this tension between predestination and the call to missions. You know, he even thought, you know, maybe predestination actually undermines the urgency of missions. But then he came to this profound realization that this very doctrine of God's sovereign plan is actually essential for genuine hope.
Oh, wow.
In the face of, well, let's face it, often overwhelming human resistance to the gospel.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like instead of thinking, well, if God's going to do it anyway, why bother?
Right.
We start to realize that the certainty of God's plan is actually what fuels our hope and motivates our involvement.
Because we know he's going to accomplish it.
Exactly.
And our efforts can be a part of that.
Yeah. We're not trying to make something happen that might fail.
Right.
We're invited to partner with God.
Yeah.
In what he's already sovereignly bringing about.
So our actions become a response of love and obedience, right? To his
clear commands.
Yeah, to his clear commands.
And we get to participate in his amazing plan.
Yeah. And this leads us, I think, directly to the critical question of our response then.
Right.
Right. So if God's global purposes are unfolding with absolute certainty, then
what is our role?
What is the big question, right?
It is. And I really like that phrase from one of the sources.
Okay.
Go, send, or disobey. I mean, that really kind of
It sums it up, doesn't
it?
It
Encapsulates this whole thing, you know?
And the understanding that emerged from Bethlehem Baptist Church, it was pretty sobering, you know?
Oh.
They realized that their disobedience, it wouldn't ultimately thwart God's mission.
Right, because his purposes will stand.
His purposes will stand firm.
Yeah.
Isaiah 46:10,
yeah.
My counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. But their disobedience would lead to their own loss, right?
Exactly. They'd miss out on this incredible privilege of participating in something of eternal significance.
So indifference, it's not a neutral stance.
No.
It's actually a form of opting out, right?
It's choosing to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
When God's inviting us to join him.
Of something really meaningful.
And aligning ourselves with disobedience, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also vital to recognize, right, that not everyone is called to physically go to distant lands, right?
Absolutely. Not everyone is called to be a missionary in that sense.
Yeah. So that's where this essential role of sending comes into focus, doesn't it?
It does. And 3 John 1:2-8.
Okay.
It highlights that crucial contribution of those who actively support missionaries.
Okay.
Tom Steller emphasizes that this sending, it should be done in a manner worthy of God.
Yeah.
You know, recognizing that those who go, they do so for his name's sake.
Right.
So this involves dedicated prayer, generous financial support, investing our time and resources, offering practical help.
Yeah. It's more than just a passive donation, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a deep, active partnership in the work of the gospel.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected in this global endeavor.
Yeah. And it's about being intentional, you know?
Yes.
Not just throwing a few dollars in a plate and forgetting about it.
Right.
It's about really engaging with the needs of missionaries and supporting them in tangible ways.
Yeah. And then our sources, they introduce this really compelling concept of a world Christian.
Love that term.
Right. So this is someone whose entire worldview is shaped by and aligned with God's global purpose.
Yeah. Their whole life is oriented around.
Yeah. So what does a world Christian look like?
So they're someone who is deeply impacted by the glory of God.
Okay.
And his mission to fill the earth with the knowledge of that glory, echoing Habakkuk 2.14.
Yeah.
And they consciously orient their lives in accordance with that mission, regardless of whether they're called to go or to stay and send.
Yeah. So it's like it's a fundamental shift in perspective, isn't it?
It's a whole new way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
Of understanding our place in God's overarching story.
Okay. So ultimately, as Piper so succinctly puts it, our response boils down to these three
options.
Fundamental options, right?
Go, send, or disobey.
Actively engaging by going to the nations, actively supporting those who go through sending in meaningful ways.
Yeah.
Or by default, choosing the path of disobedience through indifference or inaction.
And I think that's such a powerful way to frame it, you know, because it reminds us that there's no neutral ground here.
Right? We're either actively involved in God's mission or we're passively resisting it.
So God's global mission, it's not just a suggestion.
It's not.
Right, or an optional activity for some.
No.
It's the central narrative of history.
It is.
And our lives, they find their greatest meaning when we align ourselves with it.
Yeah. When we say yes to his invitation to join him in what he's doing.
And experience that profound joy and eternal significance of participation.
Absolutely.
So to bring it all together for you, our listener, the central takeaway from this deep dive is this unwavering certainty of God's global mission.
It's not a maybe.
It's not a maybe.
It's a guarantee.
It's not a fragile hope.
No.
Dependent on human effort.
It's rooted in God himself.
But a guaranteed outcome.
Yes.
Rooted in God's very character.
His promises, his power.
His promises and his sovereign power.
Amen to that.
And our involvement, whether as those who go
or those who send. It isn't about trying to make something happen that might not otherwise occur.
It's about joining him.
It's about, it's an incredible privilege.
It is.
To join God in his already assured victory.
And it's a participation that carries eternal significance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about what we do here and now.
Right.
It's about being part of something that will last forever.
Yeah. So we really encourage you to take some time to reflect on these truths from the sources we've explored.
Let them sink in.
To let them sink in.
Yeah.
And to prayerfully consider the implications
for your own life.
For your own life.
And how you can be involved.
And how you might play your unique and vital part in God's
unstoppable.
Unstoppable, glorious mission. And that leads us to a final perhaps.
Final thought to ponder.
Yeah, provocative thought for you. So, considering this absolute certainty of God's plan to fill the earth with his glory.
What jumps out at you?
Yeah. What single aspect of this global mission resonates most deeply with you at this moment?
Right now.
Yeah. And what might be one small concrete step you could take starting today to more intentionally align yourself with that mission, whether that involves exploring opportunities to go
yourself.
Or seeking out meaningful and active ways to send and support.
It's those who do.
It doesn't have to be something huge.
It doesn't.
Just one small step in the right direction.
Yeah. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been a pleasure.